This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good morning, Dodge. Now, much has been debated about whether or not the Fed made the right decision. But what's interesting to me is that it's also raised the question of the third mandate. If the Fed has in fact become the world's economic guardian and if it should be looking at global financial stability. What do you think?
Well, good morning, Melissa. I think they're being drawn into that perspective only because what's happening in the world is going to be affecting the U.S. much more than it has. I mean, you take a look at the wording, the economic activity is expanding at a moderate pace, et cetera. That's all favorable. But recent global economic and financial developments may restrain economic activity somewhat here in the U.S. and are likely to put forward further downward pressure on inflation in the near term. The Fed seems clearly worried that overseas weakness is a danger to U.S. growth and to Fed attempts to move inflation to target. So not raising rates is a defensive measure, and to the degree a stronger dollar will exacerbate downward price pressure, preventative. The Fed is now much more cautious than our market expected and bordering on fearful, which should signal concern about the true strength of our U.S. economy. So yes, they may be drawn into a more global monitoring, but it is only because it is affecting the U.S. more than it has in the past.
Well, do you think that the Fed's decision not to raise rates will continue to reverberate through markets this week, or do you think that the shock has passed?
It will continue to reverberate. In markets outside the U.S., it will be considered positive. It will be one less concern, at least short term. But overall, it'll be, in the United States, it will be considered one more concern. And I suspect that we're going to have a much harder challenge to get back into a more positive, from a market point of view, more positive movement, because we're in a very negative season in the fall, and there's much more headwinds going on now.
So, Dodge, you mentioned a bit earlier that the Fed is really concerned with the economic growth of the world, so global economic growth. Do you think that then there's reason to keep a closer eye on the Chinese president's meeting with Obama at the end of the week?
Oh, yes, there is. We're going to keep a very close eye. This is an important moment in one of the world's most vital relationships. What we're seeing, trust is fading on both sides. President Xi has lost patience with the previous strategy of hiding brightness, nourishing obscurity. He's really been flexing muscle, but not over here. He's been flexing it away from the U.S. in the Western Pacific. We've had an interesting change in the run-up to our presidential election here, Melissa. There's a guy called Donald Trump. He's not really been on the scene for very long in terms of politics, but he may stay in front of the 16 Republican hopefuls, and he certainly has hit a very popular note with voter disgust of politics as usual. He has led the accusation of China raping America, and along with others has viewed the Chinese devaluation in August as the first shot in a global currency war. Not that he knows really much about the international perspective, but he's bringing something up in front of the U.S. public that has been much less politically restricted in the past. Now, not all is acrimony. I mean, last November, the U.S. and China reached an agreement on carbon emissions. They hope to encourage progress in Paris later this year. China certainly helped broker the nuclear deal with Iran last April, and they're moving closer to our stance on North Korea. There is even speculation, Melissa, that perhaps the U.S. and China may announce a substantive deal during this visit. But both countries now are preoccupied with politics and at home. And if you look at Xi, he's coming up to 2017. He wants to replace those leaders who are retiring with trusted supporters, and quite frankly, displaying backbone and dealing with foreigners, including the U.S., is always a winning tactic in Chinese politics. So it's going to be very interesting when they come out with their summit on Friday.
We'll definitely keep a close eye on that, Dodge, for sure. But around the world, Greek elections happening, results trickling in at the moment. We're also expecting U.S. GDP data this week, also manufacturing reports from around the world. Are you watching anything, any of those above closely, Dodge, this week?
We've been watching Syriza. He is going to fall short of majority, but he will be back in the lead position You'll probably work with the same coalition as before. We don't expect anything to happen with Greece until the end of the year, when they're going to have to meet the requirements in order to get their financing, particularly for their banks. So I think Greece is well in hand at this point. We're watching existing home sales on Monday. We're watching durable goods on Thursday. Friday, we're going to watch the reaction to the meeting between Obama and Xi. Right now, we're expecting news to be coming out geopolitically to be not negative enough to create additional concerns in the markets. But with regard to the U.S., we need more than that in order to strengthen the market's reaction to what's been happening.
So the Fed will definitely dominate the market's attention this week still?
Oh, yes, and in fact, they will dominate till the end of the year, because this Saturday we had three of the voters coming out saying that they should start the increase in interest rates before the end of the year. But that is really to offset the traders taking the negative position. So we will wait. We will see. Will they add? We're nowhere closer to knowing what the final time, the deadline will be. So the market's still reacting to the fact that they haven't moved yet.
Dodge, thanks for your time. That was Dodge Dorland, Chief Investment Officer of Landor and Fuest Capital Managers in New York.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.
This year, I will chew 117 number 2 pencils.
I will doodle 9 Staples notebooks to death.
When it comes to school supplies, it's guaranteed your kids will go through a lot.
I'll make a whole lot of paper airplanes.
I will lose my backpack.
That's why you get guaranteed savings for back to school at Staples.
I'll give away my last pen to Nathan in math class.
Get guaranteed savings at Staples, and right now, one subject notebooks for just a penny with a $5 purchase. Staples, that was easy. Valid on select SKUs while supplies last. Limit 6, ends 8/25/12.